Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I hope you're doing well. In today's video, we're going to be discussing what I think is one of the most overlooked aspects of learning musical language or a style of music. Whether you're learning rock, blues, maybe you're studying bebop right now, baroque music, or maybe you're transcribing a specific player. Maybe you're doing a lot of Eric Clapton or Dimebag Darrell right now. Doesn't matter, whoever you want. I think learning about this aspect and approach can give the musician incredible insight on the architecture that produces the sound that you're interested in, maybe that player or that style of music. More importantly, I think this is one of the most pragmatic and interesting ways to take something from what you're learning and make it your own, develop your own sound. So by the end of the video, I think you will have learned one of the most powerful ways to absorb music as a player. So what I'm describing here is something formally known as melodic contour. And it is a really simple concept. It just means the shape of a melody, the directional shape of a melody. For example, you have a starting note, and then does it go up or does it go down? How many times is it going up? How many times is it going down? And the interesting thing that we can do with this is that we can analyze music in this way and leave the notes, the rhythm, and the harmonic aspect all aside. And just look at music in terms of directions. So we could take the Beatles, for example, and analyze all of the melodies they wrote in the 60s and see if there are any tendencies, patterns, or anything that they favored in terms of, the directional shapes that they had in their melodies. And this is gold for a songwriter or a musician because you start seeing patterns that could define a style or, again, I love using this word for this concept, the architecture of a specific sound. I started valuing this concept a lot when I was studying bebop. Bebop is a style of music where we get caught up with the notes, the harmony, right? There's so much to learn, so much to learn about the language of the music and the history of the music. And we can sometimes forget about little things that are important too, such as articulation, which is one of the biggest things in bebop music. A lot of students come to me and they learn all the bebop stuff and they're missing the most important part, which is, okay, do you have the articulation? That's what actually makes it swing. But also, again, things like this, the shape of the music. And in bebop, this is probably one of the most important aspects and one of the most revealing things about the music, that in order to play these lines, you also have to be paying attention to what are the directional patterns that are embedded in the lines. If you analyze Bud Powell, Charlie Parker, you name it, you're gonna find certain tendencies that vary from player to player, but there are tendencies in the style as a whole. So many years later, after studying for a long time bebop, jazz, rock music, blues, I started thinking, inspired by my students who were asking me, what should I be thinking about when I play? What is it that you think about when you improvise? And the quick answer to that is nothing, right? You're not supposed to be thinking when you play necessarily. But I was trying to come to an answer, a more concrete answer. And I realized that the thing I relied the most on as a player is something I call the shape instinct, meaning that when I'm playing any line, like let's play over a 2/5, right? Whatever, anything you want in the style of bebop or jazz. What I feel I'm relying on is this shape instinct, meaning that at some point I started paying attention to the shape of the music, right? What are the directions? What are the tendencies in jazz or bebop or whatever specific style within jazz they're studying that sound good and that are iconic to the music? And once internalized, you start developing this shapes instinct. It's sort of, and I'm not talking about patterns. I'm not talking about like memorizing patterns to play over the neck. I'm talking about getting familiar and singing certain directional patterns of melody that just get into your intuition as a player, and they serve as a compass. And it's really because it's an instinct. It's something you're relying on unconsciously, pretty much. So I thought it was pretty interesting, and I started studying teaching students a lot about shapes. You know, we started analyzing music in terms of shapes. After doing the research, one of the coolest things I found out was that our brain, after a long time of learning something deeply, compresses information into shapes. So you're not really thinking specific pitches like G, B, D, etc. We're thinking shapes. And to me, that's what the shape instincts mean. And I think it's, again, incredibly important as you learn in this music or any music style or whatever you want to internalize, to pay attention to the shape of the music, which is one of the most defining characteristics besides the notes, the harmony, and the rhythm, which are incredibly important. And I'm not saying those things are not important to study. This is just sort of a different behind-the-scenes look at the music. So taking it back to bebop, one of the most important things I learned by looking at it this way was that when I started getting into post-bop players like Coltrane, Joe Henderson, Herbie Hancock, you name it, I started realizing that these musicians were adding their own harmonic ideas. The compositions evolved into more harmonic, more complex harmonic stuff, and in the lines too, right? Like just a different sound entirely in the 60s and so on. But they kept a lot of the shape lineage. And if you analyze these players, you know, a lot of the music is not just lineage in terms of phrases, harmony, tunes. It's also the shape of it. And as a player, I started learning phrases and thinking, well, if I take the shape of the music and add my own notes and my own ideas, that is, to me, one of the coolest ways to develop your own sound while keeping, you know, the historic lineage of the music. Okay, so I want to show you now how you can use this to learn from any player or any music you like. I'll show you what I did with Coltrane, for example. I looked at the Miles Davis Quintet records under the Prestige label that they did, Relaxing with the Miles Davis Quintet, Working. And I focused on those records, and I took Coltrane and I transcribed 100 line shapes. Not the notes, not the rhythm, not the harmony. Just the shapes of the lines. Just to see what I could learn in terms of shapes, right, from Coltrane. Like, is there a tendency here? Is there a specific shape in the lines that he's favoring? And is there something I can take in terms of the architecture of Coltrane's playing in the 50s that I can take for my own playing, right? Not copy it, just take the shapes and then create my own lines with that. And what I found was incredible. You know, the things you can analyze doing something like this from a player's style is just incredible. Okay, so once I had the 100 line shapes together, the goal was simple. I just wanted to see if there is a tendency there that he's favoring, you know? And then use that for my own knowledge as a player to develop my own conclusion and use that in my own lines and keep that lineage of Coltrane shapes from the 50s. So it was hard because there's a lot of lines there, which, by the way, you can get the PDF on my store. I'll put the link in the description. So it was very hard, and it forced me to try to come up with types of lines in terms of shapes that he's playing. The first type that I found is that he's playing motivic shapes, which is just a short burst, a short idea with random shapes. It could be something like something short that is not really indicating a specific type of shape pattern. So that's the first one. Then I created this second type, which is the balanced shapes. These are lines he's playing where there is a random mix of directions. Nothing too meaningful in terms of a pattern or anything like that. It could be something like, you know, a healthy mix of going up. Could be one up, two down, one up again, one down, three up, something like that, where you don't really see a pattern. Okay? Within this, it could be short or long. It could be a long phrase or it could be a short phrase. So that's the balanced type. Then I kept looking to see if I could find some tendencies, and I did find pattern shapes, things he's favoring in terms of like shapes he likes to play. One I think was, note, go up, and then two down. You know, and in other records, he has other ones like stuff like that. So those are pattern shapes, and you can find a lot of them. And then we have mirror shapes, which is the fourth type. And that is when he goes up a lot, and then he goes down. He's mirroring the first part of the direction. Like if he went up, he's going to go down, and the other way. So once I had this, I started to look for tendencies. How is he combining these four types? But already having these types was great, because looking at this, there's 100 of them. And I looked at all of them and really tried to carefully see what these patterns were, what these tendencies were. And this is the four I came up with. Now, if you get the PDF, one of the great things to do with this is to be creative. Like find your own conclusions. Do you see any other patterns? Do you see any other tendencies? So come up with your own conclusions. I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff. So then the goal was to find tendencies with these four types. Okay, how is he mixing them? How is he deciding to play this stuff? And here's what I found. He's primarily playing a lot of downwards lines. He ends with ups with an up direction. So if he's coming line down like he will end that line with an up at the end. He's accenting when he goes up in the line a lot. Like every time that was up there, there's an accent. The ups also, to me, kind of divide the structure of a line. Sometimes he goes down a lot and then he plays an upstroke to divide the line. Something like that, where like there's a series of notes going down and then he goes up. A lot of his lines start bidirectionally, like he goes up and down. Like directions will change and then he'll decide to go in a specific direction. There's so many things you can find that you can use as a player. And this is one of the main reasons I'm making this video. I'm showing you a really interesting way to get stuff from somebody that is not so obvious, using the notes, the harmony, the rhythm, which is obviously important. But this is sort of like the architecture of the sound that you only need a little bit of information to start practicing. Like I can take one of these ideas, like start practicing playing lines that go down, and then accent the ups, whatever that I found here. I could take that and just practice it for months. Okay, so here are my two favorite ones in terms of tendencies that I found him doing a lot, and you can tell he's favoring this type of structure in the line. It is going up a lot, right? And then combining that with a balanced phrase, meaning a phrase that has a healthy mix of ups and downs randomly. So he'll go up, like, and then finish that, with a balanced phrase. Or down, same thing. And then he will end that with a balanced phrase. To me, this is gold. Right, to learn from the architecture of a master in this way, to practice lines in this way. So I just wanted to make this video because it's something I'm working on, and I think it's just fascinating to look at music and players in this way. It just gives you a direct access to the shape of the music in a way. So again, and one of the most important things of this video, I think, is the idea of just getting those shapes and adding your own notes to it. Because it's sort of a way of keeping that lineage of a certain player or a certain period of music and adding your own stuff to it. And as you get better with note selection and harmony, it will start sounding better. But you have a solid architecture there. And really, as a player, when I play lines, Let's say all the things you are. All of those lines are based on shapes that I'm not necessarily consciously thinking about, but just kind of feeling, right? You know, all of that is a sense of like, it goes this way. It's a weird thing. But I think that shape instincts is developed through this approach. It takes time, like all of this stuff. Again, I guess I'm not making videos that are teaching you quick things, but that's not how I learned. You know, I learned that this stuff just takes a long time, and there's no substitute for hard work. Anyway, guys, that's the video for today. If you're interested in getting the PDF from this lesson and just taking that and using it in your own way, maybe you can take those shapes and play lines with it. Maybe you can fragment them, take bits of it. I listed some of the things you can do with it in the PDF. Feel free to get it from my website, and there's other stuff there from other lessons. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.